To understand a serial killer, we must first hear their story, no matter how disturbing. So, from a killer cop to a cannibal Vietnam veteran, join us. A violent psychopath responsible for the murders of at least 33 young men and boys, John Wayne Gacy was also a compulsive liar. Despite mountains of evidence, he maintained he was innocent until his execution. Even in 1992, 2 years prior to his death, he brazenly lied to reporter Walter Jacobson about his crimes, insisting he was a victim as well.
2.5 hours of clutching at straws, cunning and manipulative denials. But if you listen carefully, you catch him slipping up. About John Vukovich, for instance, his second victim.
What happened to, what happened in the Vukovich case? Where was he picked up, and how did he get to the house, and what happened with him?
I don't want to go into the other, the 5 that I know about. Just take it that I did. Vukovich is not one that I killed, so I don't know nothing about him.
Such carelessness is typical of a serial killer.
By the time they've committed 10 or 12, they are very, very laid back. By the time they commit 15 or 20, they start getting careless, cavalier.
If it sounds familiar, it's because you've heard the experts say it about Jeffrey Dahmer. Gacy dislikes the comparison.
What do I think of Jeffrey Dahmer? I don't know the man.
You feel
Beyond that, I have no comment on Jeffrey Dahmer because I'm not Jeffrey Dahmer. And I would not, whether it's Berkowitz, whether it's Bundy, whether it's Williams, Wayne Williams down in Atlanta, or any of the others, or Charlie Manson. See, I don't comment about the other cases for the simple fact is that I wasn't there.
Do you feel somewhat of a kinship with some of these people?
God, I hate that when they put me in the same club with them, because if I know that I didn't commit the crime, then I have been given the injustice, and so has the families, and nobody gives a damn about the families.
as though he cares, which clearly he does not. And when the families insist that John Gacy pay for his crimes with his life, his real feelings come out.
That one mother that gets on television all the time who thinks I should be given 33 injections, I think she ought to take 33 Valiums and go lay down. She goes on Geraldo's show and all these other shows talking about, I think it's Maori, I think is the name. Her Marine son. Her Marine son, if her Marine son was so great, what the hell did he run away from home for all time?
However, the scariest part of the interview was when Gacy showed off his rope trick, in which he creates a makeshift tourniquet. Whilst this may seem like a casual discussion about different types of knots, he often used this method to strangle his victims to death.
He says he was simply discussing knots in general. Catch his sense of humor.
Shoelaces, huh? You're in trouble now. Are you afraid sitting that close to me? What the hell? Oh, this is too long. You don't need it this long. This is hard trying to do this. Why don't you put your hand out? Okay, here. What I told him, I said, here, all you do is you wrap it around, you put one knot in it. And I said, then you put a second knot in it. Okay? I said, then you take a stick and stick it in here, and you just turn this. And I said, it causes an tourniquet. I said, that's the only knot I ever learned.
Precisely the kind of knot found on the ropes wrapped around the necks of the victims found under the house on Summerdale.
Unlike Gacy, Michael Bruce Ross was open to discuss his murders. However, compared to most killers, Ross was fascinated by his psychology and sought to understand his behaviour. Still, detectives maintain this was an act, another attempt at manipulation.
Well, I'm a serial killer. I've killed 8 women, 6 in this state and 2 in New York. I'm not a big serial killer, by the way. 8 people, that's nothing. I mean, there's a lot of other guys you can go see. I saw this woman walking along the road with a stroller. I pulled off the side of the road. She came into the driveway, walked up the driveway. I was behind the house. She saw me and I grabbed her. I told her that if she didn't do what I wanted, that I would smash the baby's head against the wall of the house. Where I think that's important is I've always said that I never understood why the Women never really resisted me. I'm not a big, strong guy. Nobody ever seemed to fight. And I've always attributed to that I must say something like that, similar to the other victims. I raped her, strangled her, I left her for dead. The only reason she's not dead has nothing to do with me. So, when I attacked her, I don't believe I was in control. I don't think I could have stopped. Reason I say that is because there's a very clear point to me after she was dead when I was feeling, well, I didn't really feel anything. I mean, I knew what was going on, and I saw what was going on, but it was more like watching an old film that we used to see as kids in the high school, you know, I mean, in elementary school, and they've been played so many times, they're all spliced, and they'd be going along and then jump. You would think that if you killed somebody, that you would have that face imprinted in your mind, and that you wouldn't be able to get it out of your mind. I don't have that. I never had that. The only face that I can see is what was in the newspapers a few days later when they were missing. You know, like the high school pictures. Anybody know where this girl is? Type thing. That's when I think of them. That's the picture I see. I don't see them as they were when I killed them. I can't see them as I was killing them. When I say I don't have any remorse, that doesn't mean that I don't have any regrets, that I don't wish that didn't happen, that there was something I could do to bring them back or anything. It's just that I don't have any feelings towards them. I feel like I should be tormented by what they looked like when I was killing them, or tormented by what was happening immediately before I killed them and stuff. And none of that's there. None of that's there at all.
Yet it does seem that Ross felt remorse for at least one of his 9 victims. In an interview with true crime author Christopher Berry Day, he talked about 14-year-old Leslie Shelley, who was tragically murdered alongside her best friend, April Brunias.
They were dead as soon as I saw them, I think. I picked them up. They wanted me to drop them off at a gas station. I drove right by the gas station. Anyway, took them to a place, tied them up with some cloth that I had in the back seat. I put the younger girl, Leslie Shelley, into the trunk of the car. And I took the other girl, April Burnett, out, and I raped her and killed her. And I put her in the front seat. Well, the smallest one, Leslie Shelley, has always bothered me more than the others. I think it was because she was so small. I think it was because she was so cooperative. And I think it was because the way she was killed was so close to the fantasies. That was the one that was, it was like it was a fantasy. I'm not like that now. I'm just such a lovable guy now.
Since the 1960s, profilers have interviewed multiple serial killers. However, as we've already seen, many attempt to manipulate and control the situation. A prime example of this was Arthur Shawcross, convicted of murdering 11 sex workers over a span of just 21 months. In various interviews, he told a host of extreme and embellished details, with it still unclear what was really true. Additionally, based on who the interviewer was, Shawcross would try a different manipulative method. For one, if he sensed sympathy, he would speak about his childhood, as seen in this interview with psychiatrist Michael Stone.
I can remember back to when I was about 4. When I was 4, something happened to me with my mother. And that's when I was introduced to sex. Oral sex. And at 4. Just playing, right?
Yeah.
And when I started doing the same thing with my younger sister, well, I told my mother, I said, I love my sister Jeannie more than sister and brother, right? And she tried to convince me, no, it's not going to happen. You know, that's not right. Yeah, that's when she take a butcher knife to you and grab a hold of it. And she says, if you don't behave yourself, I'll cut it off.
You ever had thoughts that had to do with your mom, you know, where you really felt like dicing her, you know, or making pot roast out of her? Because it would be understandable, wouldn't it?
It would be understandable.
Sure it would. I mean, also, what you
Those thoughts were there.
Yeah. What about with the girl a couple months later? Was there something similar about that, or was that something that you had begun to think about?
Well, I was by myself.
Yeah.
And she showed up by herself. She was on top of the bridge. She started talking. I said, "What are you doing down here by yourself?" You know, she said, "I go where you want to go." So I pulled in my fishing pole and stuff, and put them back up on the bike, and I started walking upstream, right? And she comes up there with me, and I don't know, just a spur of the moment.
She was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
Yeah, but there was a little bit sexual stuff going on with her.
Right.
Yeah.
Shawcross admitted raping the girl before he killed her.
I was thinking about my sister Jeannie back then.
Yeah, okay. Say a little bit more about that.
That's something I don't like to talk about.
If she was just in your mind, you know, kind of an equivalent symbolically of Jeannie, a person could say, well, she would be the last person you'd want to rough up.
When I realized what I did, you know, my only thought was to get rid of her.
Ah.
Meanwhile, another tactic was to shock the interviewer. According to Shawcross, during a tour in Vietnam, he savagely killed and cannibalized 2 Vietnamese women.
So I went down the mountain on the other side, kept on going down through the swamp, and I get on the other side and I see 3 grass huts up on the side of a hill. And I see a woman coming down, older woman. She's got 3 rifles on this arm and 3 rifles on this arm, AK-47s. She's coming down a little path, maybe 6 inches wide, takes the rifles and she's putting them inside of a hollowed tree. And I went up behind her and I took a machete off my pack and I hit her right in the back of the head. And it took about 3 or 4 strikes to cut the head off. And I cut a stick about 6 foot long, sharpened at both ends, and drove it into the mud, picked up the head and set it on that stick, faced it to that tree.
The details about mutilating the Mama San up on the mountaintop in Vietnam comes very close to mirroring the kind of vengeful assault that he would like to have made on his mother.
And as I went up the trail a little farther, I see smoke coming out of the last hut. And I get up there and they got a good-sized log with steps on it. And I climb up on the log and I look in and here's a girl in there and she's making booby traps with gunpowder. And I tied her hands up, led her up into the mountain, up on the other side, tied her to a teak tree. I took the body of the other woman and I cut the leg off at the knee and at the thigh. And I skinned it out and everything. It was really about yay big around. And I ran a piece of green bamboo through the bone itself, and I roasted that leg on a little fire I made with C4. I just cooked that leg, and I kept asking that woman questions about the rice and everything else, who it was for. And she kept saying she didn't understand. And I told her, I says, what you're going to see now, I'm going to do to you, right? And I bit into that meat. It was, you know, the human flesh.
By 1990, Gerald John Schaefer was desperate for the attention he'd once received. To his joy, he was able to make contact with true crime author Sandra London, a former high school girlfriend. However, it was her belief that Schaefer was innocent and that the crimes he discussed were merely lurid fiction written by a frustrated and framed ex-cop. In a series of letters, he recounted the supposedly fictional murders from the perspective of a killer police officer. Schaefer insisted they were art, but police believed they were thinly veiled descriptions of the actual crimes. Later, these letters were published in the book Killer Fiction, as well as its additional sequel. Eerily, while Schaefer maintained he was innocent, he used the books to boast of his body count. Whilst authorities concluded he was responsible for the murders of 34 women, he claimed the number was closer to 100. Further, he asserted his crimes had even impressed fellow serial killer Ted Bundy, who he is known to have spoken to.
And I'd like to do something with my life, you know, that exemplifies the good as opposed to the bad. And I had hoped that Killer Fiction would have a good, would be something that would be good. And it's kind of a mixed bag, actually. Some people say, yeah, it's really good. And then others say, it's really disgusting. And I say, yeah, you're right, it is. It's really disgusting. Does it make you want to hate murder? Or does it make you want to do murder? Does it really horrify you? Are you a little more cautious about picking up that hitchhiker? You girls, are you a little more cautious about who you pick up in the singles bar and take home? Like Mr. Goodbar, right? They see the deliberate stranger and they see it as entertainment. Ted was real. He was real, man. He'd kill you and laugh. He enjoyed it. And I could sit there, like when I'm sitting with you and talk about it, he relished it. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy, if only you could get his face on a camera when he's talking to me like this in the cage. He had followed my case in the detective magazines, and that he had killed 2 girls in Washington as a copycat crime, so to speak. And he would tell me that he took them up on the logging road and strangled them and had sex with their corpses and went back and had sex with their corpses and cut off their heads. He's like bragging to me. It wasn't exactly a brag, it was like a tribute. How many did you get, really, Jerry? They said 34. Did they get all of them? Or do you have private graveyards? I said, Dad, I'm the best. So he had 36. He wanted to be the best. And he was obsessed because they said I had 34. And he was afraid that I had ones that he didn't know about. So, and he was always trying to get me to say, no, that's all I got, 34, you know. But I never would say that. I discerned that he was concerned about the number. And it was my own way of needling him back by saying, I'm the best, Ted. You're going to fry, and I'm going to be here. And I'll be the best, just like they said. The number 1. Mr. Stone had it all right. The best there ever was. And you're nothing.